Chapter 6. Aix-les-Bains Resort. Frenchmen in high hats with red ribbons watched the first American doughboys disembark their train. They were covered in mud from the trenches. A local band, made up of schoolboys and old men, tried its best at what they thought sounded like the Star-Spangled Banner. The townspeople watched the soldiers with curiosity. They had watched their own men march off to war, with few to none ever coming home again. But now their replacements had arrived. No one laughed aloud at the band, but it was hard to hide a chuckle at their earnest fumbling. The mayor and his staff proudly greeted the Americans with the customary peck on both cheeks. From out of nowhere, there was a sudden burst of sound like no other ever heard before. Lieutenant Europe and his band marched into the square, 40 mostly dark-skinned musicians, with a shock. They had arrived the night before and was ready to say bonjour. Their Marseillaise hit the crowd like a tidal wave, nearly knocking them off their feet. The crowd cheered and cried long after the final note had died away. Jimmy's journal. It's great here at the resort. We get hot water baths, nice shaves, clean haircuts. This was a former health resort, ruins from the Roman Empire, so I hear. Our primary assignment is to provide entertainment for the American and British troops. But it's been fun playing for the civilians because they appreciate us so much. Captain Major Forbes tells us we are going where no American soldiers have ever stepped foot. We are on a mission of great importance. We are not merely musician soldiers of the American Army, but ambassadors from America. We all take that very seriously. This is our chance to show the world who we are, so we're working hard. Rehearsals in the mornings and concerts in the afternoons and evenings. Most of the concerts are held in the casino, a 1,000-seat theater, but we play in the parks on Tuesdays and Fridays. We've also played at Chambéry, an old cathedral city not far from here, for church services. It's a favorite place of J.P. Morgan and the former home of Rousseau, another fellow I have to learn about. I've been spending time with Giselle's assistant, Amy. Giselle's band has suddenly appeared, and they are going to perform too. Amy makes me smile and listens to my every word, even though she doesn't understand half of my rambling. The first night, our band played over there, and the soldiers climbed up onto the tables and waved their caps. They begged us to play it over and over again. We've done so well here that our stay has been extended 2 more weeks. I know that David will be relieved to hear it. The moment David learned where Giselle and her band was staying, he sent her a note, all the while cursing himself for looking so eager. David's note to Giselle's camp. I knew I'd see you again. I'm not one for believing in fate, but here we are. When I saw you sitting in the garden near the fountain in Aix-les-Bains this morning, it was out of a dream. Just like in that dream, you were waiting for me. It was cold today, but the way the sun seemed to shine only on you, it looked like a page out of a book of fairy tales. You greeted me with such a beautiful smile. It's only right that we're here together. It's a wonderful place, a temporary escape from the war. Soldiers come here to recuperate, and we entertain them. We're both doing a good thing, using music to lift their spirits, to heal them. I'll see you this evening at the casino for another battle of the bands. Oui, David. A French outpost just outside of Aix-les-Bains. Giselle, in a German commander's uniform, walked through the earthen pathway of her newly conquered outpost. She was followed by two of her junior officers, Weller and Schmidt, trusted officers who also played in her band on her tours. The three enter a room where the body of a French wireless operator sat propped up in the corner. Another German soldier guarded the machine. "Report," Giselle asked in German. "The machine is ready for your use, Commander," he replied. Giselle took a seat in front of the machine and typed a coded message. The other officers looked on in awe. It was a privilege to witness the legendary code writer at work. When she was done, Giselle swiveled in her seat to address Weller. "Please inform Commander von Strucker that the false message has been sent and received by the enemy." She turned to the third soldier. "And you, dispose of this body. I have wired to their command that all is still well. That will be all." The three soldiers saluted. Weller and Schmidt started to exit, but Giselle held Weller back. "Commander," he asked, "deliver this note to our man at the casino. He will get it to the asset." Weller took the note and left. Giselle watched the other soldier drag the operator from the room by his ankles. When everyone was out of sight, she vomited. Giselle's note to David after the next show. "David, thank you for the lovely evening. I enjoyed our walk out after the concert, even in the chilly air. The moon seems brighter when I'm with you. I like knowing that you enjoy many of the same things, good books, art, and all kinds of music. If not for the bombings, I would be happy to show you the Louvre in Paris. Thank you for the compliments on my band, but let me speak about your own band. Magnifique. I counted at least 40 players. The first foreign band to play La Marseillaise so well. Those dancing songs. Dare to jazz, oui? You keep everyone dancing. I want to know more about this jazz. I accept your invitation to dinner sometime. Giselle. P.S. Mais non. I will not give you my real name just yet. You will have to keep guessing. Smile. One mild afternoon in Chambéry, David and Giselle's bands put on a combined show at an orphanage. Children sat wide-eyed in the front rows of wooden pews. Older women sat at either end of each row to keep the children orderly, but it wasn't necessary, for the children loved the show. Giselle and her accordion player, Michel, opened with folk music. The youngsters smiled and clapped along with the bouncy tunes. Giselle encouraged them to join her in ringing rounds of Frère Jacques. David watched Giselle the entire time and found himself barely able to hold back a tear. In this holy place, full of innocence, Giselle looked angelic in her simple country dress. David knew that she was keeping things from him, but in that church, she was unmasked for a moment. As the Hellfighters played, the children did not see skin color. They were focused on the wonderful instruments that made so many interesting sounds. As Lieutenant Europe closed out a piece with a crash of brass wind cymbals, he spied movement from the corner of his eye. He turned to find a little boy standing and imitating his conducting. When the song was over, Lieutenant Europe walked over to the boy. The other children watched and giggled as the gentle giant handed over the baton. 3 and 4 and. Lieutenant Europe gestured for the band to play a simple tune for their miniature guest conductor, who led with authority. The audience went wild. Giselle watched the smiling children. A sudden wave of nausea forced her to sit down. Images of an orphanage from long ago flashed in her mind. A small village in Germany. Tearful children hid beneath pews as gunfire erupted over their heads. Elderly women and men shielded them with their own bodies. As shots rang out, some of those elders fell dead. A young Giselle sat on the ground across from her mother, Eva, who cried as she lay dying. Blood spilled from her mouth onto the ground. She reached for Giselle. Their choir, made up of black and white missionaries, had just finished singing spirituals for the church service. They wore simple, hand-sewn robes with embroidered crosses, a tradition the Americans brought with them. Giselle's mother's clothes were covered in blood. "Where are you hiding our soldier?" a German soldier shouted. "Give them over, and we will leave. It is very simple." The Reverend, a kindly man who always gave the children sweets, stood tall. "The church welcomes all who seek shelter," he said. "I implore you, turn away from your ways. The Lord will forgive you, even now." Bullets ripped through the Reverend's body. Giselle covered her ears to block out the screaming that followed. Eva beckoned for her to draw closer. "Here," she shouted, "but stay down." Giselle started to crawl to her mother's side when her father appeared out of nowhere. He tried to shield her mother as bullets pierced both of their bodies. Eva went still, her eyes still focused on Giselle. Back in the present, Giselle gripped the edge of her seat as the old screams rang out in her head. "Giselle, did you hear me?" David's face came into focus. "Would you like to get some lunch before we head out?" he asked. Giselle was struck by the sudden softness in David's eyes. She felt a twisting pain as she took his hand. "Yes, please." The next few weeks were like a dream for David and Giselle. Popular demand from the troops dictated that both bands' engagements at the resort be extended another 2 weeks. The front was quiet, and for a blissful time, the war did not exist. David and Giselle's days were filled with music, and the nights were filled with passion. More than a few soldiers grew envious of David's privileged time with Giselle. On strict orders to not cavort with the local women, Negro soldiers were particularly annoyed. The terrible three found themselves coming to David's defense in the camp with some of their fellow soldiers, but even they had reached their limit. One night after a show, Grenade Tommy asked Fox, "When's she leaving?" "Good question," Fox said as he packed away his clarinet. "I've been asking around. Nobody seems to know who dispatched her band here in the first damn place. This extension was supposed to be a Hellfighters only show." "That's what I thought too," Tommy said. "And now it's only her performing. The band has disappeared." I asked Giselle straight out where Frenchie was. "You didn't call him Frenchie to her face, did you?" Tommy chuckled. Fox smirked and feigned insult. "Of course not," he replied. "But anyway, she said something like he's in the French army and was called for a mission elsewhere. When I asked where her band was performing next, she suddenly excused herself and took off." Grenade Tommy grunted. The next morning, David, Giselle, Jimmy, and Amy had breakfast in town. Villagers thanked the soldiers for their service. At the table, David nudged Jimmy, who had reached into his jacket pocket to pull out a small wrapped gift. He handed it to a surprised Amy. She opened the box and pulled out a necklace. "Mon Dieu, James!" she exclaimed as she hugged him. Jimmy blushed. "There's only one 18th birthday." Amy beamed. She rose from the table and tugged at Jimmy's arm. "Come, James," she said in broken English. "The post. I will wire grandmother." She pointed at the necklace. David and Giselle watched Jimmy and Amy leave arm in arm. Giselle winked. "So, Jimmy was able to afford that with his army pay?" David hid a smile. "Well, part of it. I tossed in a few francs. He wanted her to have something special." Amy was everything to her grandmother. She sends all of her money home. "She was everything?" David asked. Giselle looked sad. "I don't have the heart to tell, Amy." "Where's she from?" David asked. "Ream." David shook his head. "I had a show there. She was one of the girls hired to assist me. Giselle continued. We got along well. One day, she brought her grandmother to meet me. Old and wise, the lady pulled me aside and begged me to take Amy. I agreed. That was very kind of you to do that, David said. Giselle blistered at the compliment. Amy loves you like a mother. I know that you care for her. A group of white AEF soldiers passed by. The majority of them saluted David, but a few shot him nasty looks. One soldier motioned, slitting his throat. David rose from his chair, but Giselle grabbed his arm. David sat back down. Ignore them, she said. The sight of the AEF soldiers made her think about the immediate future. You are returning to the front in the morning, she declared. David watched the white soldiers' backs as they rounded a corner and disappeared from sight. Yes, crack of dawn, he replied. It took Giselle a moment to understand what David meant. She threw her hands in the air. These American expressions, she said in exasperation. But I should not be surprised. These are the same people who bring jazz music into my country. David enjoyed Giselle's reactions to his music the past few weeks. She appeared to analyze it as if it were a new enemy. At first, your jazz was seen as a threat to our old songs, she said. But now I understand. It is the oldest song there is, the song of the soul. Love and pain in all of their variations, always true. David kissed Giselle. We are jazz, he whispered in French, and just as timeless. David took Giselle's hand into his own. He did not want their time together to end. She had opened up to him about many things, and it made him feel guilty. There was one secret he could not longer keep from her, now that they were so involved with one another. There's something you need to know, he began. Giselle's face dropped. She pulled away and put up her hands to halt David mid-sentence. No need to explain anything, she said. The less we know about each other. But that's just it, David said. I want you to know everything about me before I go back out there. Giselle appeared to think about it a moment, then nodded for David to continue. I had a fiancée back home, David said. Her name is Ruth. She's a great gal, but I don't love her. David, Giselle said. After I met you, David went on, I broke things off with her. I had been fooling myself for a long time. I know the difference now. Giselle put one finger to David's lips to silence him. Ruth is what you need, Giselle said. David shook his head. There's a world of difference between what I need and what I want. I want you. At the village post, Amy cried in Jimmy's arms. Telegraph messages fell from her hands to the floor. I'm really sorry, Amy, Jimmy said. Is the messenger sure? Yes, Amy said between sobs. Reims taken. My village gone. I have no one left. You're not alone, Amy, Jimmy said. You have Giselle. And, well, you have me too. Jimmy's heart broke for Amy. He realized that he cared for this girl. What will Mama say? He wondered. If you want, Jimmy said with a tremor in his voice, you can even come back to the U.S. with me. Amy looked up at Jimmy in tearful gratitude. The band's departure from Aix-les-Bains was devastating. Villagers sobbed and showered the Hellfighters with champagne as they marched to the railroad station. Local authorities herded people off the tracks. In the chaos, David looked for Giselle. He assumed that she would see him off. He cursed himself for not having a ring ready to put on her finger. He wanted her to know just how serious he was about making a life with her. In France. A runner handed him a message and disappeared into the crowd. It was a note from Giselle. Her words made David's knees go weak. Giselle's note to David. David, I am so sorry that I left you without saying goodbye. Our time together was special, but it was a mistake. You are tempting me to become an even greater sinner than I already am. I would only cause you pain. There are things you do not know that would change your opinion of me. I could not bear it. Forget about me, Giselle.